at 10:15 on BBC One.
The news now on BBC One with Natasha Kaplinsky.
The first American soldiers are punished for abusing Iraqi prisoners. But the general in charge points the finger at US military intelligence. Turkish police say they foiled a plot to attack world leaders at a NATO summit. The head teachers leader launches an outspoken attack on feckless parents. And rocket Ronnie O'Sullivan hits the heights to become world champion. Hello, very good evening to you. The US Army General in charge of the Baghdad jail at the centre of the prisoner abuse allegations has spoken about the scandal for the first time. Brigadier General Janice Karpinski said she wasn't aware of any abuse and the prison cells in question were under military intelligence control. So far, 6 soldiers have been reprimanded, a move likely to see the end of their military careers. President Bush has demanded that no one found to be involved should escape punishment. Clive Myrie reports now from Washington.
She was the only female commander in the war zone, overseeing 16 jails and hundreds of Iraqi detainees. Now Brigadier General Janice Karpinski is under investigation amid allegations prisoners were abused. On American television, sitting next to her lawyer, she said she had no idea what was going on.
When I saw the photos, I was sickened by them. I just found it unbelievable. They were despicable acts photographed.
And she made it clear others controlled the cells where the abuse took place.
It was part of Abu Ghraib prison operation, but those cell blocks, cell block 1A and 1B, and the prison was actually under the control of the Military Intelligence Command at that time.
So did military intelligence here at Abu Ghraib prison sanction the mistreatment of prisoners? One US news magazine claims that humiliation of detainees was a common tactic used to make interrogations easier. At the jail today, some worried relatives of prisoners were allowed inside. This woman says she couldn't ask about how her son was being treated because the Americans were nearby. I'm scared of them, she says. My heart trembles for my son. Today, the US's top diplomat promised swift action to limit the damage to America's reputation.
The acts of a few, I trust, will not overwhelm the goodness that comes from so many of our soldiers. And I'm sure that the investigations will get to the bottom of this and make sure that any problems that exist in the prison system will be fixed, and fixed promptly.
President Bush says US soldiers must be punished for shameful and appalling acts. But the damage to this country's reputation has already been done at a time when global goodwill for the occupation of Iraq is sorely needed. Clive Myrie, BBC News, Washington.
Our correspondent in Baghdad, Caroline Hawley, went to Abu Ghraib prison today. I spoke to her earlier and asked her how worried Iraqis were about the conditions inside.
Well, certainly among relatives that I met who were outside Abu Ghraib waiting for news of their family members, there was a mood of real concern. One woman said to me, "Where is the democracy here?" Now, another man, a detainee who'd just been released, said he was too frightened to talk to us because there were American soldiers present. I spoke to another detainee who was released about 10 days ago, and he was also talking about what he called torture and humiliation. He told me that his brother, who was also in jail, had been forced to strip after he'd failed to understand an order to sit down. I think the view among Iraqis is that the abuses inside Abu Ghraib have been widespread, maybe not as extreme in many cases as what we've seen in those pictures, but they have been widespread. In fact, we've got one Iraqi newspaper today saying that the same forces that came to free Iraqis were now humiliating and torturing them. There have been calls for action, and I think this will have a very devastating impact on America's image in Iraq and, of course, elsewhere in the Arab world, particularly after weapons of mass destruction weren't found here. The focus shifted onto Saddam Hussein's human rights record, and people are now saying, well, the Americans are committing human rights abuses, so what did we gain from this war?
The army is following 3 separate lines of inquiry into claims that British soldiers abused prisoners in Iraq. Troops from the Queen's Lancashire Regiment are being questioned in Cyprus, inquiries are continuing in Basra, and investigators here are studying the Daily Mirror's photograph. The paper is standing by its story despite suggestions that the photographs might show a reconstruction. David Loyne reports.
At the base, the Queen's Lancashire Regiment in Cyprus, Royal Military Police have now begun an investigation, while parallel inquiries go on in Iraq. An army statement says the pictures could be a reconstruction of an actual event. That would explain the inconsistencies. Friends of the regiment believe they're fake.
The evidence we've seen so far, looking at the photographs, there are too many inconsistencies. It can't be genuine, we believe.
Today's Daily Mirror quoted what their soldier sources said in answer to specific questions about the pictures. The guns looked like the wrong version of the SA-80, the standard British Army rifle. In the Mirror, a soldier known only as A said, "I can't explain." The truck where the alleged attack took place was not of the type in use in Iraq. Soldier A said it was a 4-ton truck, I'm not sure what make. He said it was the sort of truck they always used for raids. There were also questions asked about the lack of obvious dirt, sweat or injuries in the pictures. Soldier A said that was the way it was. But on the question of whether the soldiers' floppy hats and uniform markings were right, the Mirror has a better defence. Their other source, Soldier B, said, "We wore floppy hats all the time," and the Mirror prints pictures of Queen's Lancashire Regiment soldiers with uniform markings as shown in the disputed pictures. In a statement, the Mirror said, although we appreciate that the Queen's Lancashire Regiment has concerns about the Daily Mirror, we also have very serious concerns about the behaviour of some of their troops in Iraq.
Tonight, the real story behind these pictures seems, if anything, to be much less clear. But while the questions over details matter, of course, in Britain, and particularly to the regiment concerned, the damage is already done in the Arab world. And the publication of these pictures has given extremist elements in Iraq more reason to take on the occupying forces. David Loyne, BBC News, at the Ministry of Defence.
The authorities in Turkey claim that they foiled a plot to launch bomb attacks against next month's NATO summit in Istanbul. After raids this morning, 9 men were charged with belonging to a terrorist organisation with links to Al-Qaeda. 50 heads of state, including President Bush and Tony Blair, are due to attend the summit. Emma-Jane Kirby has more.
Suspected Islamic militants arrested by Turkish police in the northwestern province of Bursa. The 16 men are accused of planning a bomb attack on next month's NATO summit. Police have already charged 9 men. They say the detainees had been working on the plot for more than a year. A search of the suspects' homes revealed a cache of weapons and bomb-making equipment. Officers seized guns, explosives, chemicals and sophisticated computer equipment. The head of intelligence in Bursa, where the arrests were made, said the suspects had made remote-controlled and time-activated devices which were ready to use. It was clear their target was those attending the NATO summit in June. CDs and videos featuring Osama bin Laden were also found. The men are believed to belong to Ansar al-Islam, an extremist group thought to have links to Al-Qaeda. The suspects will appear in court later this week. Turkey's already tightened its security ahead of the NATO meeting, when more than 30,000 police officers and hundreds of snipers will be on duty. NATO officials say they have every confidence in the Turkish police and have no intention of moving the venue of this summit. But coupled with last year's bomb attacks in Istanbul, this latest series of arrests will certainly prompt a feeling of disquiet. Emma-Jane Kirby, BBC News at the NATO headquarters in Brussels.